Please welcome your first speaker, celebrity historian, Raffi Andonian.
I watched my father live the American dream. But just because your dream feels real doesn't mean you wake up to your fantasy. That's why I started my company, Orchestrate Business. As a child playing the classical violin, I understand that all the pieces of a business have to come together in harmony, just like in an orchestra. My father escaped a communist regime as a teenager with his family, stateless, as his papers said, as he came to the US, enrolled in community college, went on to get his bachelor's degree at UCLA, then a master's, and later employment with a major aircraft company. That's when I came into the picture, watching him live the American dream. As a child, I watched him as what was formerly a side gig became his main gig as a jewelry manufacturer, no longer at the aircraft company, having opened his business and now growing his business. As a little boy, I discovered 5 a.m. when I would wake up with my father to go to his office to see Daddy work. We'd get up before sunrise, sneak around the house quietly so we don't wake up my mother or my brother, my little brother, step outside, not turn the engine on, to stay quiet, put the car in neutral, and each of us put one foot outside the door and push the car out of the driveway. Later, I realized that is the American dream. As Kobe Bryant says, the grind is the dream. With him as a business owner, no longer an employee, I saw that the stage is set long before the audience arrives. By the 1990s, he had built that company into $1 million business. And one of his jewelry pieces that he manufactured was acquired by the Smithsonian. Yet that's not the lifestyle that I saw him take into retirement. When the lights on the stage began to dim, the shortcuts of the conductor became apparent. His financial advisor was focused more on the personal assets that paid her rather than the business assets that paid my father. That's why I started my company, Orchestrate Business. I wanted to change that model. But going back to that moment, reflecting on that, and as I grew into young adulthood in my early 20s, working at the battlefield at Gettysburg here in Pennsylvania, one day as I walked to work, I see a woman with her face 2 inches from the ground, staring at a painting, working on it stitch by stitch. This painting is more than 400 feet wide, almost 4 stories tall, and if displayed properly, is 360 degrees around you. It's a predecessor to motion picture, movies before movies existed. Many were painted in the 1880s and 1890s and circulated throughout the world. This particular painting depicted Gettysburg, the Battle of Gettysburg, and was, of course, stored in Gettysburg. Now, before that, had toured the world before movies. but came to his resting place in Gettysburg. Now today, you can only find 10 cyclorama-type paintings, which is the term for these, throughout the world. Only one depicts Gettysburg, but 10 of this type of painting that are displayed throughout the world. But the reason this matters to this story is because I later realized what I was seeing with that lady working stitch by stitch on those paintings was a $10 million project by a nonprofit dedicated to history, restoring that historic painting. That's when I realized the power of money to achieve good. And of course, in that case, to achieve good for something that I'm interested in, history. After all, I am the celebrity historian on television, right? Yeah. So in recent years, when I began to work at a Fortune 100 company as a financial advisor, with the perspective of my father's story and having seen the power of money to achieve a larger good, I was disappointed when all the metrics were about gathering assets for the company, rather than metrics that were based on client goals. What if the answer was not the products or the accounts held by the company? What if the answer was expanding my dad's business, or spending the money or investing the money into a rare painting rather than assets held by the company? Or having worked at historic sites throughout my early career, what if the answer was property, land itself? So I quit. I left that environment and established my company, Orchestrate Business. Rather than designing a fee structure and a business model that is designed to extract as many assets as I can from the entrepreneur into the accounts that I manage, I wanted to build a business model that positions the entrepreneur to do what they do best, which is to make money, and pays me to do what I do best, which is connect money to objectives. And in doing so, I hope to take that business model in the financial industry that I encountered and turn it on its head, from firm-centric to client-centric. Rather than extract, I want to contribute and connect. Remembering my father's story, remembering the power of institutional money applied to a collective good as my underlying guiding principle, to always remember the power of money to do good.